Time for the only radio show of its kind. Auctioneers of antiques, collectors of cool, veterans of vintage. It's the Donley Auctions Hour on AM 560, The Answer. For the next hour, enjoy great information about buying and selling antiques and collectibles, and some interesting stories. Now, the Donley Auctions Hour.
Welcome to the Donley Auctions Hour. Thank you for joining us. We are here every Saturday from 1 to 2 p.m. Just say, Alexa, play the Donley Auctions Hour on AM 560, The Answer. Just make sure she's playing today's episode, not last week's episode. Did you ever wonder, Randy, how the person who invented the clock knew what time it was in the first place? That's a little question for you to ponder today.
Okay.
But I'm Susan, and I'm here today with my partner, Randy Donley. We are the owners of Donley Auctions in Union, Illinois. We're just 60 miles west of Chicago, right down I-90 at the Wild West town. That's us. That's you and your family owning the Wild West town.
Sure, yeah.
But unlike the Seinfeld series, which is a show about nothing, the Donley Auctions Hour is a show about something.
Oh, Seinfeld. Wasn't that great? The show about nothing they always promoted.
That's right. In our show today, we're going to talk about antiques in general and specifically vintage clocks today. So back to the question is, how did the person who invented the clock knew what time it was? I'm sure a lot of you know the answer, and they used what back in the day? Sundials in ancient Egypt, sometime prior to 1500 BC.
But still, isn't it interesting that they decided, that an hour was a standard length of time,
right?
And 60 minutes to the hour and everything. Right. Mathematicians had to figure all that out so that they could figure not only the length of time in a day, but in a year. It was all calculated mathematically.
Right. They had to figure out how long it took for activities and how much daylight they had in the ocean and the sand and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So clocks and time in general is our subject of the day today. So don't go anywhere. But first, Randy, let's talk about the crazy adventures at Donley Auctions this week.
Oh, my goodness. There's so much that happened this week at the auction gallery. We had that huge phonograph and radio collection that came in.
Right. And, that was from callers from our last show when we were talking about vintage radios.
Isn't that incredible? Yeah. Thank you so much out there, all of you who listen and do call us with items that you want to sell. That's what we do. We're here to sell your merchandise for you, for your collections and everything. And yes, we've gotten a lot of interest in items coming in since our last show. Yeah.
Right. And not only that, but we are partners with you when you do bring it in. So we have a new consignor that we met who has 215 radios. I can't wait to get to know him and work with him more. So keep the phone calls coming, folks. We love hearing from you. And
we've had so much else. Somebody just yesterday dropped off a 1900 storm buggy. Looks like an old Amish carriage. We'll be selling that in April for them. Yesterday, we had a pickup from the Netherlands. A buyer in the Netherlands flew in to pick up their merchandise that they bought from us at past auctions.
It's got to go onto a cargo ship.
Yeah, it's all got to be crated and shipped and everything.
Crazy.
Just incredible. Now, just think, you can buy it and just take it home in your car. Other customers have to actually have it crated and shipped and sent across the ocean. My God. People are buying from all over the world.
Bidders from all over the world, that's for sure. And we'll talk a little bit about that, too, later on in our show about how to bid in an auction, whether or not you can attend or not, and what your options are. But one thing that also happened this week, I want to let everybody know, our next vintage license plates auction is now online. And that auction is Sunday, March 12th. So if you are a vintage license plate collector, I suggest you go to DonleyAuctions.com and click on the button that says License Plate Auction.
You got it.
It's online only, but you can come in and preview them if you want.
Yeah, you can see them live at our facility, which is in Union, Illinois. But like I say, it's online right now. If you go to DonleyAuctions.com, you can see the license plate auction taking place as we speak.
But you know what we've had? This is our, third one? second or third one in the last 6 months. License plates are becoming highly collectible.
Well, they have been.
They have been all along, but all of a sudden we've just got an influx of vintage license plates, a lot from this show.
Well, and it's what we keep saying, though. It's the age of collectors. So many collectors are just getting old, and it's time to pass these collections along. So what's interesting about all the collections that are coming on the market right now is these have been collected up for 20, 30 years, and at no price could you have bought them from people that was their collection. It wasn't available. So buying at auction is just the perfect time right now because so much merchandise is coming onto the market due to the age of so many collectors. They're getting old, and it's time to pass it along.
That's right.
You know, we even had a driver who just left for Florida to go pick up a Mercedes and a Porsche that we're going to be selling in April.
That's right, because our April Spring Classic, we have a whole day dedicated to Petroliana, which consists of vintage and classic cars, motorcycles, bicycles, signs, advertising, gas pumps.
So again, if you've got cars, motorcycles, or these type of things that you want to sell, again, think of the advantage you have being in the Chicago area. You're not shipping it all the way from Florida or California like so many of our clients do. They've got huge, shipping fees and this type of thing. But right here, we can do it for you in most cases, no charge.
That's right.
We'll pick it up for you.
And tell them what's happening today as we speak.
As we speak. Oh, right. But I don't want you to stop listening to the radio. But as we speak.
No, you got to multitask.
Our firearms and military auction is actually taking place right now. So if you go to DonleyAuctions.com and click, on our site for the auction today, you can see what's going on live, literally.
And, we're being videotaped live as well, so you can actually see us.
Right, exactly. So if you want to watch the auction, you can do that right now. It's taking place, and it'll probably be going on till, I would say,
p.m.
5, 6 o'clock today. So there's a lot to be sold yet. You haven't missed all that much. And
They're just missing the donuts and the coffee. But if you get in your car and start driving 60 miles west of Chicago, you might get there in time for lunch.
You got it. Well, not really, because it's already
1 o'clock.
1
That's
o'clock,
right.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much left.
So tomorrow we do have our military auction. So if you are not there today and you want to come to one of our live auctions, drive on out tomorrow. Auction starts at 10 o'clock, and that'll be military relics, helmets, uniforms, medals, swords, daggers, all kinds of great items. The auction starts at 10, but you can get in as early as 8 o'clock, 8 a.m. for viewing, and that's, again, only 60 miles from Chicago, right up I-90, very easy to get to.
That's right. And once you come in, you come to the front desk, and our lovely staff there will walk you through the process and how to get registered. It's very easy, but we'd love for you to come out and see us sometime. This weekend is a perfect opportunity.
And, if you're a consignor, and want to see what, who and what we are, come to the auction so you can see for future, if you want to consign with us, exactly what would take place. So many people, again, are saying all the time, well, wait a minute, I don't understand this process. So come to an auction, come on out tomorrow. Sunday, we've got this live auction
and you're here.
place.
We have another auctioneer who's going to be doing the actual auctioning, but Randy's here to meet with you, talk with you, walk you through the steps. You can actually meet the famous Randy Donley tomorrow.
Susan and I will both be available
we'll be
for
there.
you. Yeah, sure.
That's right. So the other thing that happened this week, of course, it was Valentine's Day, and I got the best Valentine's Day gift so far.
Well, I think so.
It was pretty awesome. Even though I planned it, it still was pretty amazing. So thank you for that, Randy. Tell them what we did.
Oh, my goodness. We were at the San Filippo Estate in Barrington, Illinois, which is a phenomenal organization. It's actually the private estate of the San Filippos, and Jeffrey San Filippo right now is running events there, as for charity. So if you do have a charitable organization and are looking for the best site in the state of Illinois to run a high-end charity function, it is the San Filippo Estate. and we were there for the perfume passage, which is the best collection of fragrance in the world.
In the world. He said United States, but I think everybody agrees.
Well,
it's
no,
the best
there
collection
were perfume,
in the world.
People there that said it's
It
by
was
far
an
in
amazing,
the world.
unforgettable evening, and I'm just so glad we got to be a part of that. So thank you, Jeffrey Sanfilippo, for inviting us.
It was just incredible.
It was wonderful.
But we've been there so many times. Tell them some of the fun stuff that's happened there.
Well, we attended the Hollywood memorabilia dinner, and I got to sit with Bernie Koppel of the Love Boat and Martin Landau, who wanted to steal me away from you. Unfortunately, Martin Landau passed away in 2017. But we'll talk more about that later, too. But I want to let everyone know, before you go anywhere, stay tuned. We have our special guest coming up, Alex Deno, owner of TikTok Clocks in Palatine, is going to talk to us about clocks. You are listening to the Donley Auctions Hour right here on AM 560, The Answer.
They've been called auctioneers of antiques, collectors of cool, even veterans of vintage. And they can introduce themselves. Thanks for listening. This is the Donley Auctions Hour on AM 560, The Answer.
Welcome back to the Donley Auctions Hour. I'm Susan, and this is Randy. We're with Donley Auctions in Union, Illinois, just 60 miles west of Chicago. And we are talking today about antique and vintage clocks. And we have a special guest. His name is Alex Deno. He's the owner of TikTok Clock Repair on Hart Street in Palatine. How are you, Alex? Thanks for joining the show
Alex,
today.
Yeah, thanks for
Susan, Randy, how are you guys?
Hey, great.
We're
great.
excellent.
You know,
thanks for having me on.
I wanted to tell everybody real quick a quick story about how I acquired a huge, as you know, Alex, a huge antique clock collection out of Minnesota. And like most collectors, this gentleman loved to play with his toys, so to speak. And he had things taken apart and dismantled, and he was going to do this and going to do that with it. Well, when it came time for us to receive it, everything was still apart. And, oh, my God, I called you, Alex. And
Alex to the rescue.
Oh, if I didn't have you, what would we have done, huh?
And your dad, too. Let's not forget about your wonderful dad. But I do know that what you do is truly a lost art. Tell us a little bit about your background, Alex.
Well, I started when I was 8 years old. You know, the company itself started in 76, but when my parents married. But I was 8 years old, young, homeschooled, and, you know, I kind of grew up around it, you know, in the home. But being homeschooled, my mother was always, you know, she was my teacher, and she was one of our clockmakers and our, our part owner. So what happened in the early days, I would take lessons for school, and while she would be working on a clock, my school desk was in the clock shop. So I would sort of absorb everything going on around me while I did my homework and my schoolwork while she worked on a repair. And it just sort of morphed into an interest for me when I was sick. You know, when you're younger, you don't really think of these passions and things. When I turned 16, I just sort of started loving it, and it became, I started living and breathing clocks. And, I had been learning about the repair business since I was little, but I just finally started to get actual repairs. My father would really just fuss over me and kind of groom me along with my mother, and they would give me work. And I did some correspondence work as well, but that's how it started.
That's one thing I absolutely love about your company is your parents, Jim and Vicky, are still very active. I mean, all of you have been out to our facility to help us with clocks. And I just have to tell everybody out there, if you need clock repairs, I mean, one thing I know you do specialize in grandfather clocks. I'll get back to that in a second. But, oh, my goodness, you are the nicest people. I've had so many repair people in different fields and everything over the years, and sometimes they can really become prima donnas. And you guys are so down to earth and easy to work with. And one thing I know that you do that is so unheard of, you actually make house calls for grandfather clocks, correct?
We do, absolutely. And you can't just lug them in. That's the problem. And some of the old ones can be exceptionally sensitive, and they need to be worked on where they're sitting. We get some from the 18th century, heck, some even from the 17th century I've done downtown, and they don't like to move.
Right, so you don't recommend that anyone transports them to our facility. You just can't do that.
You can, but it's very difficult. I would advise against it. I would talk to a professional first, or talk to the folks we have at the auction house that, they just seem to really be good with moving these things,
That's true, we are.
And that is, again, yes, one thing that we do. And, of course, we take our pride in treating people's possessions like it's our own.
Alex, what do you recommend would be something to look for as a new collector? What's valuable now? How would we identify an antique? What do you say about that?
The antique, that's collectors alike have had there's a couple of rules of thought, but basically an antique clock is anything, 1945 and older. Of course, like anything else, the market is just gone downhill.
Right.
But there are things out there. For instance, there was a auction recently over the weekend, last weekend, and there were a few clocks, that are, they would bring a small fortune in the 80s and 90s. They're going for, $100, $200 when these are $1,000-$2,000 clocks. So that's something that's really sad. But the more valuable pieces out there still kind of hold their value. So what you want to look for, we notice in the market right now, the antique American clocks are the ones, particularly from the East Coast makers, like such as Eli Terry and Simon Willard. Those types of clocks tend to maintain their value, and there just wasn't many of them made to begin with. So that market sort of, has preserved itself. Granted, they are going a little lower than we'd like, but they are pretty valuable still. So banjo clocks, which have a shape of kind of a banjo on the wall, or I would say clocks that are musical, that have, bells and different things. That's more of an English trait, but those are clocks that are sought after because they're very pleasant to listen to. So for collectors and novices alike, read up and follow the market and just see where things are going, kind of follow the trends. That's the best thing.
You talk about musical clocks and values and everything. We sold years ago a 3-disc Symphonia music box clock. Outstanding clock. Back then, I mean, probably 20 years ago, this clock brought $100,000. Now, that same clock today is probably as low as $25,000 to $30,000. However, I mean, that's still a big hit when somebody has one out of their house. Okay, it's kind of like stocks. You missed the peak, but still, that doesn't mean that all clocks have no value. I mean, the entire antique market is depressed because there's no young collectors. That's the biggest problem that we see is all the collectors are now old. And as merchandise comes on the market, supply and demand, too much supply, not enough demand. But still, again, when we talk about a clock being worth $25,000 to $30,000, that's something you have to know because, we can find that for you in your home.
That's right. So if you do have something that you're unsure of, leave us an email at donleyauctions@outlook.com with some photos. You can even text them to Randy. I can get that number later. But we kind of need to see what you have, what the tag says. We'll ask our resident experts, Alex and his family, just to give you some direction on what to do with it. Is it worth anything or not? But we need to see the photo and any information you have on it. However, What I do want to mention is what we know is also very collectible, in addition to mantle clocks and wall clocks, are PAM clocks. Tell them about PAM clocks, Randy.
Well, PAM clocks are advertising clocks, and they all pretty much look alike. They're about 1 foot to 18 inches square, and they advertised products, small electric clocks with a beveled glass front, and you would have seen them in auto repair stores or supermarkets advertising products like Coca-Cola or
Pepsi,
ice cream, you name it, jewelry stores, anything and everything advertised on PAM clocks, and they're very collectible. Average price of a PAM clock is in the $300 range, but it's not unusual for some of these to hit into the thousands.
We sold one just a couple years ago, a Pepsi neon. It had neon on it, though. Clock sold for $1,400. So you never know. You got to show us what you have. But Alex, are those the types of clocks that you repair also, or are you mainly focused on grandfather clocks?
Our specialty is grandfather clocks. However, we have worked on some PAM clocks over the years. In fact, we had one that said Coca-Cola on it. This was in the early 2000s, and it was funny because the husband had been collecting these things for years, and the wife calls us and says, "We have one clock here. We don't know anything about it, but a man offered me $100."
Well, hold that thought, we'll
Alex.
have you back on the next segment to tell us more about that.
Can you stay with us for another? I want to finish that story, but don't go anywhere, folks. Coming up next, Alex is going to finish his story about that clock. You're listening to the Donley Auctions Hour here every Saturday at 1 o'clock on AM 560, The Answer.
You're listening to the Donley Auctions Hour on AM 560, The Answer.
Welcome back to the Donley Auctions Hour. I'm Susan, here today again with Randy Donley of Donley Auctions in Union, Illinois. We have our special guest today, Alex Deno. He's the owner of TikTok Clock Repair. Try to say that fast. They're on Hart Street in Palatine. Just the best clock experts we know that we work with for many of our auctions. Alex, we want you to finish that story you were telling us about the PAM clock.
Sure. So the clock worked perfectly, and the woman called us. She lived in the North Shore. Husband was a collector of all sorts of odds and ends, but this was the only clock. And a clock repair man came out, offered her $100 for it, and she almost said yes, but she thought, I need a second opinion. So my father comes over and looks at it, and this is a Coca-Cola PAM clock. Says, you really need to get this thing evaluated and looked at because this is worth more than maybe even $500. Well, that same clock ended up going to auction. It sold for over $3,300.
Wow.
It was in New York, the auction was, as a matter of fact. But, there are some really nifty things, and especially Americana advertising.
Right.
If you have stuff like that, in PAM clocks, Coca-Cola, tobacco products, those types of clocks are always worth looking out for.
And, one thing you mentioned, the difference in value between what somebody offered and as opposed to what it went for. That's one reason that I want to tell everybody out there that we highly recommend TikTok Clock is because we know, we've dealt with you so often, we know the honesty and the integrity, and that's why we can recommend TikTok Clock to everybody out there. Jim, Vicky, and Alex, who's with us today, do just a wonderful job.
Yes, thank you, Alex. But what were you guys talking about, Joan Rivers? What was that story?
Well,
do you have time for that?
Yeah, real quick,
Just real quick.
Susan. In this collection of clocks that we got from Minnesota, as Alex was helping us put together and research these clocks. Alex, I'll let you tell the story, but it turns out Alex found out that one of these grandfather clocks had actually been owned by the famous Joan Rivers. So Alex, tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, as you know, all these things came in in pieces, and
right.
there were
I saw them, yes.
It was crazy. I mean, the poor fellow who owned it all too. I did end up speaking with him, as you have. He's a nice guy, and you always plan on finishing projects, but life gets in the way. So he has all these things everywhere, and I'm looking at one of these clocks in particular, and there's auction paperwork on their labels, and it all says Joan Rivers. And it's very interesting because I thought, well, that's an odd thing to be labeling stuff. So we put it all together, and it's a grandfather from the 18th century. Very, very primitive, but very advanced for the time period. It's a grandfather clock. For our listeners, I'll kind of briefly describe it. It sits at about 8.5 feet tall, and it has this beautiful veneer work. It's a musical tall case clock, and it plays on 14 bells. But the nifty thing is it changes its tune every day automatically without user intervention. But we found out through some...
Go ahead. No, go ahead quickly.
Yeah. We found out through some research that it was actually owned and in Joan Rivers' New York penthouse.
Wow.
Now, this clock is going to be for sale, ladies and gentlemen, at our April extravaganza.
April Spring Classic, which is April 27th, 28th, 29th. We're going to have a whole clock segment within the auction. So
right, we're going to have pretty much the second half of this clock collection.
So that clock will be in April.
That's correct.
The Joan Rivers
It'll
clock.
be ready for that, won't it, Alex?
Absolutely. It's we just restored the whole mechanism. It runs like it was designed to. And I'll say briefly to even, novices and collectors alike, there are some great clocks that are going to come up in the classic. In all price ranges, and there are going to be some fantastic pieces for the advanced collector as well, such as the Joan Rivers clock and a couple other European and early Americana things that you just do not see.
So it sounds like we're going to have a little bit of something for everyone in all different price ranges.
Well,
absolutely.
Yeah, and that's, again, the beauty of what I keep telling people constantly is this is a perfect time to buy because – first, these things have not been available for sale for the last 20 years.
Right.
They've been all collected up, and the price is right now. If you want to become a collector, you'll never get better prices than right now than buying because the price is depressed right now. It's a perfect time.
Wow. Well, absolutely. Alex, we want to thank you for being on our show today. Alex, the owner of TikTok Clock Repair in Palatine. Give them a call. Check their website at guess what? TikTokClock.com. Can't forget that one.
Plus, you can go to Donley Auctions. We'll have information about them on our website. Absolutely.
For them as well. So coming up next, we're going to be talking about the Spring Classic auction we've mentioned where the Joan Rivers clock is going to come up for sale. But we want to let you know some of the history behind this auction, some of the great prices we've gotten, and some of the things we're looking for. We are looking for some great merchandise for this. Now is the time to consign. But we also want to, again, tell you how easy it is to actually bid in an auction as a new collector, an advanced collector, a seasoned collector. We want to make sure you understand how simple it is. So don't go anywhere, folks. Now is the time to buy and sell. Join us after the break. You're listening to the Donley Auctions Hour here on AM 560, The Answer.
And now, more of the Donley Auctions Hour on AM 560. The Answer.
Welcome back to the Donley Auctions Hour. I'm Susan, and this is Randy Donley. We are with Donley Auctions. It's Donley Auctions in Union, Illinois. Thank you, Alex, our special guest today, the owner of TikTok Clock Repair in Palatine. Boy, they know... their stuff there. What an art.
And if you listen to
repair a clock.
Our show last week, I do want to say ahoy.
Ahoy, everyone. Yes. And if you don't get it, you have to listen every week or you're not going to understand our stupid jokes.
That's a puzzle now. What does he mean by that?
But, as I was doing my homework on this episode about clocks, I wanted to make it interesting because, clocks are clocks. But what Alex was saying, it's fascinating the stuff we've learned about clocks and how valuable some of them can be. And getting them to auction now is a great time. But I also found out some interesting information about the shot clock, in basketball.
Yeah.
It was introduced in 1954. And you know what they did before that?
No,
They
I have
used
no
to
idea.
sit. I know because you're not really a sports fan, so they used to sit on the ball instead of having that time where you have to shoot the ball. They used to sit on it and wait for the clock to run out.
Well, thank God they changed that.
Thank God they changed it. So I was thinking the same thing. Why don't they do that in baseball? Oh, my gosh, how many games do we have to watch that are over 3 hours long? Just pitch the ball already. Well, I just learned that ESPN has just announced that there's a new rule in 2023 called the pitch clock.
Get out of here.
I'm not kidding. I might have to go see a game this year. So they get 15 seconds to pitch the ball when the bases are empty and 20 seconds when there's runners on base. Thank gosh, those games are going to be under 3 hours this year. So
and it's all because of a clock.
All because of a clock. Even though we have them on our phones now.
Well, you know.
But they're still important in life. That's for sure.
That's so interesting that you bring that up because, so many times I look at clocks. I used to look at clocks.
You used to wear a watch every day, too.
I did. I wore a watch. But beyond that, people had advertising clocks on the front of their businesses to draw attention because everybody was running late. Oh. What time is it while they're driving?
Those are so collectible.
There was a clock that I remember on my way to school. I always looked at a bank clock to see, how late I was, trying to get to school.
Were you always late?
Now, really, now that everybody's got it on their cell phone, there's really very little need for that. Everybody's got a clock in their hand.
We now need, though, a shot clock and a pitch clock, though. That was my point. But talk about a tower clock. That was something that we were going to mention earlier. I don't really know what those do, but I know we have some in our gallery right now.
Let's back up and say you were going to tell us who the most famous clock is.
Oh, yeah. My little trivia question for the day is, what is the most famous clock in the world? And I'll give you the answer to that in the next segment.
Well, no, tell us now because I want to go into tower clocks.
Okay, that's actually a good idea. I'm sure most of you know that Big Ben in London, that was built in 1959, is the most famous clock in the world.
Well, and the reason I wanted to say that now is because I wanted to mention in our April auction, we have tower clocks that are
huge.
For sale. And tower clocks is a specialized collecting, and it is actually the mechanism of the clock that sat all the way up in the top of the tower to operate these tower clocks. Obviously, if people are collecting tower clocks, they're not collecting the whole tower, just the mechanism inside it. And we have several of them in our April auction. Mm-hmm. So the April auction, ladies and gentlemen, is so eclectic. There's so much there. Cars, motorcycles, signs, gas pumps, architecture, and, in this auction, actually a large collection of clocks from tower clocks to mantle clocks to figural clocks, and advertising clocks. We have clocks, with neon around them that advertise, products and everything. So advertising clocks, you name it, they're going to be in this auction in April.
That's right. I had a friend who said, I have a barber chair. Can you guys come take this barber chair for me?
I remember.
Sent you to her house, got the barber chair, looking around her garage, and saw that magnificent clock hanging on the wall. What'd you say to her? You want to sell that at auction?
Is that for sale?
Is that for sale? And she said, well, I never thought about it. And sure enough, we brought it back. You had the neon repaired on it.
We had the repair
I think she got $600 to $800 for that.
Right.
She was not expecting that at all. So
no, these are the type of things that people sell at garage sales for $50. Right. And that's why we tell you all the time, call us or email us because we'll let you know what our opinion of value is.
That's right. You can email us at donleyauctions@outlook.com. But all of our information is on our website at donleyauctions.com. It's DONLEY. Or you know what? I love getting phone calls. Give us a call at 815-923-7000. Whatever you're comfortable with, you can email us, call us. We'll be happy to give you some direction. All of our auctions are themed. So we're talking about we have the firearms and military auction this weekend.
It's right now.
March, it's right
going
now.
Going on right now.
March is the phonographs and antique radios, vintage radios.
Mm-hmm.
And then in
advertising.
April, and advertising. And then in April is our spring classic where we just kind of merge a little bit of everything. It's just so much cool stuff. We don't even know what to say. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail of some specific items we're looking for.
Absolutely, like cars and motorcycles, antique, vintage, and even some of the modern collectibles. So like the cars we're picking up in Florida, the Porsche and Mercedes that we'll have here, they're relatively modern but very collectible.
That's right. And we want to talk about that world record we set. Remember that last year? I think it was last year or 2021 even, from the World's Fair. We'll talk about that too. We want to be more specific about items we're looking for. We do get a lot of calls, but we're looking for the best of the best, the cool of the cool. Yep. For the April auction. So coming up next, don't go anywhere. We want to see if you have any of these items in your home. You're listening to the Donley Auctions Hour right here on AM 560, The Answer.
The Donley Auctions Hour continues now on AM 560, The Answer.
We're back with the Donley Auctions Hour, talking about items you may have at home that are of value today. Randy, let's talk about our April Spring Classic. I cannot wait. It's a finger snap away, but I think now is the time to talk about some items we're looking for.
Well, we're, as you said, just in the last segment, we're looking for the best of the best. I mean, rare, unusual, neat pieces. And so we're going to be looking for, let's talk about one item that we sold in our last April auction that we set a world's record for.
Set a world record.
A gentleman called us and he said, I've got one of the best Coke machines there is. It's extremely rare, extremely valuable, and I need to get $12,000 out of it. Well, it was from the 1933 World's Fair. It was a Coke dispenser, and yes, it was a very, very good piece. But he wanted $12,000. He was hooked on that price, and right before the auction, he wants to pull it out of the auction because he's nervous that we won't get that price.
Right. I remember that.
And he said, no, I can't do this. I can't do this. I said, trust me.
Yeah, we've got bidders all over the world. It's got bids on it. Let it go. Let's see what happens.
So it ends up, he wants $12,000. It goes for $35,000, which was the highest price paid.
Pretty happy that
in
day.
2021. It was just a crazy good. And we've got other neat items. We had a Mills horse race machine that sold for $47,500. Made right here in Chicago.
That's right.
A coin-operated, a nickel-operated, big
Nickelodeon.
It played a piano and had a little horse race display in it.
It was beautiful.
Very, very neat piece.
And these are all the type of items that we have in our Spring Classic. Coin-op machines, soda fountain, general store. Continue on.
Oh, all kinds of things. Barbershop items, tobacco bars, back bars, carousel animals, kiddie rides, gas pumps, toys, display cases. So not only are we selling those in April, but we're always looking for more. So you need to call us and tell us what you have.
Right.
And condition, so many times people say, oh, no, my item is not working, or it's broken, or this or that. Condition is not necessarily a detriment.
Right.
Many, many people want stuff in old, as-found condition. Well, they want to do their own restoration work after they buy it.
That's true, yes, and we've got people we can talk to about that as well. But one thing I always get asked about are arcade games. Vintage arcade games. Pinball machines are extremely popular right now. What can you tell us about those, Randy?
Well, pinball machines are all over the board in price. I mean, many, many pinball machines are only going to go for $300-400, but it's not unusual for us to walk in and find $6,000 pinball machines, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. So don't sell your pinball machines cheap. Let us know what you've got. Mm-hmm. We'll give you an estimate.
Again, send photos to our email address.
But I also want to remind everybody that our May auction coming up is another gun and military auction.
That's right. We have an influx of firearms right now.
We are right now restocking. I mean, we've got a gun auction going on today. Our next gun auction is in May. So it's time now to consign. If you've got guns, shotguns, pistols, rifles,
ammunition,
ammo, that's all the type of thing that we're going to be selling in May. So if you have any, you need to contact us now.
That's right. We do carry our own federal firearms license.
FFL, yes.
Our own FFL, so we can come pick them up. We can transport them. We can buy, sell them, transfer for you. So stay tuned next week. We have a big surprise for you.
You got it.
It's going to be interesting. But come to the auction. We're Donley Auctions in Union, Illinois. I'm Susan.
And I'm Randy Donley.
And we'll see you at the auction.
Thanks for listening to the Donley Auctions Hour on AM 560, The Answer. Check out all the latest information on upcoming auctions and collectibles at DonleyAuctions.com. And while you're there, you can contact someone about buying or selling your collectibles or estates. That's DonleyAuctions.com.